Today we're going to review paintings by Michael Reardon. Sup friends, Liron here. Thank you so much for joining me in another video, in another episode of Painting Masters. Today, as I mentioned, we're going to review paintings by Michael Reardon. I don't really remember how I discovered him, but he's just an amazing artist. I love his work. He has this unique sense of depth. And it really feels like some things pop to the front, some things go to the back, which is one of the things I really love about watercolor in general, and the way you create that effect is something that is still challenging for me as well. Sometimes I find that when looking at someone else's painting, I can recreate that, but when I'm looking at a scene, creating it anew is a big challenge. So in any case, I think I discovered his work maybe based on some comments you left on another video, and also I just discovered that he has a few videos on YouTube, and I think I stumbled upon them accidentally one day, and I just saw his work, and it really captivated me. I watched an interview with him, and I could really relate to many of the things he was talking about there. So what we're going to do is look at a few paintings by him and then focus on one as I did in the previous episode, so that we can see a pattern or maybe something that repeats itself in his work, and then focus on one and really analyze it like we did the previous time. I actually am very excited. Just as a side note, I have a huge list of artists, and hopefully we can just continue with this series on and on and on and on, because you give me so many great artists to look at, and I just discovered many different styles and things that really I think expanded my watercolor horizon, specifically my watercolor horizon. So anyway, without further ado, let's jump into the review.
Okay, so let's get started and take a look at some of Michael's work. I thought I'd start with this one. It's, I think, one of the most famous ones, the one that really pops up when you search for his paintings, and so I wanted to start specifically with this one. It shows a lot of the kind of things that he likes and the way he likes to do things. One thing I think is important to note is that he doesn't really care about stopping the washes and then allowing a part to dry and then continue with another wash. You can see this especially here in the border between this dome and the background, and that's fine. That's something I'm trying to do myself. But in any case, he likes to work portrait, not landscape orientation, so you see it's top to bottom, and I think this is something that makes his work really unique, because you see mostly landscapes. I think the majority is in landscape, except for actual portraits. So in any case, beautiful sense of depth. There's this fields or ocean something in the background, then this European city. I believe this one's called Domes of San Marco. So yeah, so I've got the names of the paintings here, and I can tell you. So this is for this one. Let's move on to the next one, and I have a lot of them because it was really hard for me to I just went over his paintings and they're all just beautiful, and I couldn't leave anything out, so I just included a lot of them. So here again, a beautiful one. I love the large shapes of darks here and here around this top part here. And notice how much of a difference there is in the value between the things that are in the midground and between the far most background. You can barely see this here in the background. Another thing I really like about his work is that his brushwork is actually a bit wavy. It's not. He doesn't seem to be a master of straight lines, and that's amazing. It shows you that you don't really need to use only perfect straight lines, or maybe he doesn't care about it. I'm not sure, but it doesn't seem to be a necessity, and a lot of people are worried about their drawing skills, and it just doesn't seem to be that important. This is another beautiful painting with a feeling of depth going into the distance. This bridge, just beautiful. Next, let's look at another one. This boat, the red here really attracted me. Notice how it goes from very light to very pure, and then finally to a bit of a muted, darker, grayish red, which I find really beautiful. This was actually one of my favorites that I saw, and I considered reviewing this particular one, but I decided to review another one in the end, and you'll see which one. But another one, I love the shape of this building here with the blue and the way the boat sail cuts through it. That's just really unique. I haven't seen a lot of works that are done like that, and especially with the beautiful reflections here on the water. We've got this statue again. What actually attracted me to this one is the building in the background, and then contrasting with the shape of the light on the statue itself. So that's something really beautiful, I think. Next up, this one is one of my favorites too. I think every one of those is one of my favorites. I love the contrast between the yellows and the blues, warms, cool. This plants that seem to be a little desert-like, and all of these patterns on this really, I guess, complex structure. This one's called House of Hospitality. All of these paintings you can see on his website. I will put a link in the description box, as I mentioned, so you can see. Of course, just a reminder, I don't own any of these. I'm just reviewing them. Next up, this one is called Rush Hour, Trafalgar Square. Just a beautiful, beautiful one. Look at all the details here, and then the abstraction of the trees and the people. We've got this one. This is a standard thing that I saw him do in many different instances, and that is, you see there's this one wash goes all the way around probably these rooftops, because the rooftops are kept a little lighter, so a lot of negative painting, negative shapes here. In this one, a really interesting painting as well. We've got this one. Look at the simplicity. It's just this structure, a bit of trees to the left and some shadows that lead us in, and this is another beautiful one. This one was also one that really popped for me, and what I liked about it is the contrast of the blurriness here with the sharpness of the walls, of the stairs, of the person here, and the boats. Just beautiful. I think we're really close to the final one. We've got this one. Again, a really beautiful one that popped for me because of all of the different colors and this major shadow here, which works really well. And you don't even get to see these many details. And notice how wavy, again, the lines are, how non-perfect, quote unquote, they are, and how still the result is beautiful. Next up, this one again really attracted me. I thought I'd save this one for near the end and when we reach the actual painting that we're going to review. This one again, you see the negative painting around the rooftops, leaving them a little lighter. And finally, we're going to review this one. Now, some of you, this is really a matter of taste. Some of you may wonder why I chose to review this particular one, because there were definitely more complex ones earlier on. And I have to say, I don't know why I chose this one myself, but it really talked to me. It just gave me this... I think it touched me in a different way, and I don't say that about many paintings. I do think a lot of paintings are really cool and I can appreciate them, but this one really touched me on a more emotional, visceral level, and I don't know what it is. It kind of reminded me of my childhood, and the way the feeling of the countryside is relaxing, the way this fades in the background, the warmth of the trees, the sense of light on the walls of the buildings. These all really attracted me to this one. I have no idea why it is, but you can't really explain these things. They just sort of happen. So let's talk about this one, and because we already have been talking for a while and reviewing many paintings, I'm going to be brief here. So first off, the thing that attracted me to it, as I mentioned, is the warmth, the feeling of countryside, very relaxing, very calm. This is the thing I really like. Now, the composition here works perfectly, and I mean it perfectly, and let me show you why. You see all of these groups of trees that cast strong shadows on the mountainside. First off, it's a beautiful representation of a mountainside. Second, notice how these point kind of in a diagonal direction this way, then these ones a little higher, then these ones slightly less diagonal, and finally pointing towards the point of interest, which is the houses. This is what I found really amazing with this painting. First off, you have this movement in this direction, then you have the movement more towards this direction. It slowly becomes more horizontal, and that is something that really works well for me. Next up, we have the top area being bluish gray. That again gives you a sense of depth, a sense of scale, which is really important in these kinds of works, especially when working in such a thin slice, as he works in these portrait-oriented paintings. Next up, the beautiful contrast with the houses I already mentioned. Here we have a bit of a faded look, and then finally sharp contrasts on the houses. We have the blue shadows here alongside the red roofs, which works really well for me. And one more important thing is the fence leading us into the painting in a kind of one-point perspective, which is really important because I would have totally not think about adding such a thing, but here it really adds, and it's like the scene just calls for it. This is what I mean by that, and it's one of these things that you don't always think about. I'm actually quite curious about the dimensions of this one, by the way. So one last thing that really caught my eye is the shadow in the foreground, and the reason is if we zoom out, you will see how this shadow, and we can zoom out a little more, this shadow really continues the line of movement of the fence and the tree line here at the top. Hopefully you can see the cursor. Still haven't found a way to make it larger, but in any case you can see this rounded movement here, and it just works perfectly well, like perfectly, it's perfectly compatible. That's the best way I can put it. It just looks amazing in my opinion. And finally, we have the jewels here next to the house. We have some animals and maybe a person feeding them, and it just, here you can see this beautiful, beautiful big mess on the right. You can't see anything, you can't tell anything, but it works in the grand scheme of things. It's a beautiful abstraction, simplification, if you will. So just so many beautiful things that work for me about this painting. About how it was done, I think I can tell like there was this area that's really light, then it started drying a bit, then he added a darker wash and just moved it all the way to the bottom, probably covering a previous lighter wash. Now, I think technically speaking, this painting isn't that difficult to execute once you have this in front of you and you know how to paint it. The real genius here is building that composition. I think once you have that drawing down and the composition down and you have this as a reference, technically speaking, this one isn't too complex. It is, of course, it does require a lot of experience and basic understanding of the medium and levels of wetness, etc. But in terms of the actual techniques, I think this one is doable, and I may try and recreate it in the near future. We'll see about that. So in any case, this is it. This has been quite a long video because we went through many different paintings, so I don't want to make it too long. I really hope you enjoyed this one, and let's wrap it up.
This is it. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. I really love Michael's work. The sense of depth again, and I really especially like the warmer, softer color scheme. There's a lot of play of warms and cools, as you saw. Just amazing artwork. I also recommend, he has a few videos on YouTube, so check these out. It's like quick snippets of tutorials. It's not like the full thing, but I think it is worth watching, and it will give you some idea as for how he does things and his technique. It's really interesting. So definitely check that out. It just makes things look so easy. And also he has a book called Watercolor Techniques, Painting Light and Color in Landscapes and Cityscapes. Highly recommend you check that out. I actually flipped through a printed copy of the book, and it's just amazing. So anyway, this is it. I will link down below to my podcast and my Patreon page and some other links that I think are worthwhile. By the way, I posted a few days ago on my Patreon page a quick video snippet of me playing around with slow motion while recording. So this is something I'm gonna share hopefully soon on the YouTube channel as well. But if you want to see this preview and other kinds of previews like this that I share there on Patreon first, you can support me there. I'll link it down below. And this is it. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I will see you again in another one and in another vid real soon.